us to do that effectively, the people themselves need to be empowered. And access to finance is something we believe is not a privilege. It's actually something each and every Nigerian should have. Now, the starting point was, as a country, 2 years ago in 2012, Nigeria sat together and said, let's put together a national strategic document to actually state what we want to do as a country. Because you can't actually have an end in mind without how you want to get there. So in 2012 October, the strategy document was released that clearly stated what we wanted to do as a country.
Okay.
And as at that time, a target was assigned to say, we may not reach out to everyone, we may not reach out to everyone at the same time,
Right.
but for a starting point, we want to reach 8 out of every 10 Nigerians by the year 2020. Very ambitious, obviously.
Yeah.
But we've also seen from the experiences and some of the research that have been done, both within the local and internationally, that we actually have the potentials to do that. We have the capacity. We just need to put the resources together, align our focus, and then get to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So we said to ourselves, we said, what exactly do we want to focus on? Financial services can be so diverse. There's so many services. So for a start, we narrow down to 5, which we believe are like the core of any individual life and any household.
Right.
And we focused on payments, because payments we believe is intuitive. You pay for something.
Yeah.
Either you pay for a good, you pay for a service, or you pay for something. Yeah. So we said payment is something every Nigerian should have easy access to. And then we said as well, savings is also very important. We don't want to go through over the for years and years, people earn, they spend, and there's nothing left. So we said it will be good at a national level to put resources together to actually encourage people
to save more
and empower them to put something aside, no matter how small. So at any point in time, you have something for yourself. And besides that as well, we also know that you may not always have all the resources. So there may be need for additional support in terms of loans or credit.
Yeah.
So we said credit as well, as that when you need it, you should have access to it.
Every Nigerian, no matter who you are.
Based on, of course, your capacity.
Okay.
You may not take what is, again, there are 2 sides.
Yeah.
You could also get credit that then puts you further into
debt.
Yeah. So it has to be suitable for that.
Okay.
And the 4th area we looked at is insurance. Because after all said and done, things go wrong sometimes. There are risks in any transaction. And we find a very strong point in insurance, because insurance is about mitigating risk. And ultimately, we're all nice and young, and this is active life. But there comes a time you're not this active. And as at that time, there should be something for you in terms of pension.
Okay.
So those are the 5 intervention areas that we sought to look at as a country.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Let's talk about, because you talked about the, credit scheme now. A lot of people have one time or the other shied away from, credit, because they say, I don't like bank business. I hear a lot of people say this. I mean, coming from people that normally you shouldn't expect that from. They say, bank business, I don't like bank money. There's so much trouble that comes with this. And at the end of the day, they take everything. They take more than, you bargain to give back to the banks. And now, what differentiates this new scheme from what used to be, especially when it comes to this credit facilities that people have to get from, banks?
Okay. I think what is different this time is, like I said, for once, we are putting together ideas. And I should also say very clearly, this is not just a CBN initiative. CBN is taking the lead in this. Because, of course, the central bank is the lead regulator in the financial sector.
Yeah.
But it's actually a multi-agency intervention. You heard about insurance and pension. Now, specifically to actually achieve all this, I'll come back to credit, but I want to be a bit broad.
Okay.
Now, there were 4 conditions we stipulated that financial services must and should meet to actually qualify for the financial inclusion criteria. The first condition is, we said, easy access. It's not enough to say, we have bank branches everywhere, we have them here. How easy could people reach them?
Okay.
In terms of distance.
Okay.
Because over a very long time, a disincentive people have had was they had to travel long distance. Maybe between one branch and another is maybe 50 kilometers. It's no longer convenient. You need to pay from transport, you need to leave your business and all that.
All right, Mrs. Fadeyi, you have to hold that thought. We have to go for the news at the bottom of the hour. When we come back, we'll talk about this distance between, banks. Yes, of course. We'll be right back. It's still 92.3 and not wavering with the business, with the news at the bottom of the hour.
This one that since they start collecting 100 naira 8 years since then becoming very wonky.
It's funny.
And it's even worse. I went to sell it. Like the first withdrawal, they took my 65 naira. The second withdrawal, 65 naira. That was.
Not just one back.
No. In first bank, the third one, my money went. And you guys don't find my money for me.
All right.
5 times 5. Still the nation's #1 talk news and sports radio station, 92.3 Nigeria Info. Here is headline news at 9:30. I am Eno Beziri. Former head of state Muhammadu Buhari was Rivers Governor Chibike Amechi over his intention to run for president on APC platform. Benue State Governor Gabriel Suswan dismisses insinuations of more governors leaving PDP for APC. Governor Martin Lechi clarifies that Benue State PDP has not endorsed Health Minister Mbuchi Chukwu as its consensus governorship candidate. Traditional ruler of Umoru community, Eze Anthony Owapie, to spend 1 more week in Port Harcourt prisons. NBA President Augustine Alege visits home of kidnapped immediate past NBA President Okewale at Ruma Hall in Port Harcourt. Coordinator Nigeria Center for Disease Control confirms 600 Nigerian volunteers, part of international response team. On the foreign scene, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg donated $25 million to fight Ebola. UN mission in South Sudan relocates internally displaced persons to better shelter. Burundi insists mysterious bodies in lake come from Rwanda. Police clash with pro-democracy protesters, arrest dozens in Hong Kong. In entertainment news, Nollywood actress Mercy Johnson Okoje gives birth to her second child. And in sports, players of Sharks and Dolphin FC of Port Harcourt suspend strike. The news update is up at 10 o'clock. To stay tuned, I am Eno Ubediri.
Nigeria Info, the talk station of the nation.
You can keep the conversation going.
So I need my Give me first. I don't like bank.
Nice to
They choose the one they want to address. They leave the one they don't want to address. And it's really disturbing. Working on it.
For more talk, youth and sports, stay tuned to Nigeria Info.
Very important. Talking about consumer protection, how many people are aware of the content of that protection act or law? How many people are aware of the shit? Yeah. Because the most you can do is go to the bank and they're not even nice to you. Fill the form. Madam, where you are going? Fill the form. I have the right to ask for my money. But a lot of people don't know this, so they go there and they make you feel like they're doing it great. But now they can't accept it. We're not even curious to find out what exactly is my right to come to these kind of situations. What we're supposed to do, what am I supposed to ask for, how am I supposed to ask? And we're trying to reach out to people who are not so again, lots of them don't even know that they can seek redress if they have to. Yes. And then there's an old lady who has said she will never save her money in the bank again because she's a banker got it money from her. I don't know how that happened. Banker.
Right, Reverend Precious Mala, Bishop,
she doesn't keep the money at home. Very Reverend Bishop. So how do you, in cases like that, how do you try to gain that
it's time to stand.
You need to hear what people have to say.
We also bank with
Nigeria Info, the talk station of the nation.
All right, welcome back. 92.3 Nigeria Info. 25 minutes now before 10 o'clock. We're still having the studio Mrs. Temitope Fadeyi, Head Financial Inclusion Secretary at CBN, and Sophia Abu, Financial Inclusion Secretary at CBN as well. is part of that, and they're important because they're trying to take the financial inclusion train beyond what it is right now, looking at 8 in 10 Nigerians to be financially inclusive. I'm talking about almost 100-something million Nigerians right now as we speak. And what she said is in stages, growing gradually, and one day perhaps achieving this rather. It's actually big. It's big. It's a big feat. It takes a lot. I'm going to ask Sophia a question. If I get back to you, Mrs. Fadeyi. Sophia, now looking at Nigeria, if you go from state to state, asking people to use these institutions more, what is the number one reason that they give you for not having an account, for not getting involved in financial institutions in the first place? What's the number one reason?
Well, there are a myriad of reasons, to be fair, but the biggest one was access. So distance to the financial service point itself. A lot of people complained about having to travel so far to go to an ATM and spending more than they actually needed to go get from the bank or from the ATM. And I think another issue is lack of finance as well, because I mean, if you don't have the money, then what are you going to the bank to do? So there are a couple of reasons, biggest of which is probably the distance.
Okay, now does the CBN, if a bank wants to expand, if a bank is thinking about, okay, in this area, another bank's in this area, and I want to expand to this area, does the CBN help me in any way? And what does the CBN come in? Because expansion requires money, requires recruiting staff. Where do you come in as a CBN?
So what we've done in that regard, and something we recognize, is launched something called the Agent Banking Guideline, Agent Banking Framework. And what this does is encourage the banks to sort of use local people in local communities as their banking agents. So you don't have to necessarily go and build a
How does this work?
It would be a relationship between the bank and the agent. So for instance, if there's a pharmacy in the village, for instance, that a bank decides that that area is a potential area for a lot of customers, they can go to the pharmacy and have some kind of agreement between themselves and the pharmacy to carry out banking services on their behalf. So that pharmacy becomes the agent of the bank in that community.
Wow.
And so you
that's
can
an enormous responsibility.
If people don't trust banks, the building and the staff, why would they trust an agent?
Because the pharmacy is local in the community. So they trust that pharmacist as well. So it's someone they're familiar with, someone they know will not run away
with their money.
So it's the bank riding on that trust that the locals have on that particular area.
Mrs. Fadeyi, now what Sophia said reminds me of something in Lagos, and even in this part, it's very common. In Lagos, they call it, I think, a jaw or something. This contributory scheme that they have. A lady goes with a card from house to house, collects money from you, puts together, and after a while, gives you your money back and things like that. Are you doing anything to encourage such people? Because for many people, their monies are not in the bank. They're with such people. And is that good enough for you? Knowing that their money is with such people, is it okay? Is the CBN looking at it like, okay, yes, they're saving, but not quite the way we want them to save? For you, is that okay?
Well, there are two ways to look at it. Because the CBN, at the end of the day, our overall interest is in the stability of the financial sector. And of course, the overall interest of the people who are accessing the service. Now, the service you've described, in fairness, has been around for years and years. And in some communities, very entrenched. But what we've seen is that can actually be better managed with proper structure and proper processes. Now, a lot of this is actually built on trust, which again is what we're trying to ride on for some of the initiatives we have. Now, for that is what we've just described now is what we call informal savings. But the point is, it will work in some ways, but it still has its downsides because at the end of the day, it's still just about the individual, and that's it. What we're trying to encourage people, because remember again, Nigeria is a very complex and a diverse country. We are talking about millions and millions of people. We want people not just at the individual level to say, okay, my money is all with Temitope. We want that into a formal structure. So if you're not dealing with Temitope as an individual, and something happens to me, and then that's it. If you're dealing with Temitope, that is an incorporated and a licensed entity. If something happens to the principal or something, does it affect your funds? So that way, people can actually know that, oh, it is not Temitope I'm giving me money. It is this entity that is licensed, that has a governance structure, that has clear processes and procedures and all that.
Okay.
And then you know your funds are guaranteed.
Okay.
Now you mentioned something about trust in the financial services.
Yeah.
I mean, we all deal with money.
Yeah.
Trust is something that is it's a must. It's not an option. Now, to be fair, people have had a lot of experiences that says, hey, maybe let me know. But when we are doing this, like we mentioned, this is it's a national strategy. And it's something we actually want to touch each and every corner of the country.
Okay.
So clearly trust is something that has to be part of that. Now, to achieve this, there are some clear pillars that the strategy document has laid out. And chief among them is something we call consumer protection.
Yeah.
Because we know that as long as you deal with money, people need to know that if something goes wrong, they have a recourse.
My money safe, right?
Or even for something to go right, they need to know that, okay, this is what I need to do. So there's an element of financial literacy as well. They need to know. Because sometimes in some of the experiences we've had as we go across the country and people have shared stories with us, things go wrong either on the side of the customer or on the side of the service provider. But the point is, on both sides, there are clear responsibilities that has to be available. So these two things go hand in hand. And within the central bank, to achieve this, we have a very viable department called consumer protection.
Okay.
That is all they do. They have oversight for maintaining the relationship between the individual or the organization and the financial service provider. And there are clear guidelines that both parties must play.
Okay. Now, one other aspect before we open the phone lines is this. Now, Mosunmola earlier talked about you can borrow from a bank. If you need money to start a business, for many banks, you must have collateral. You must have something. And for many banks, they want a piece of land. Now, many people that you're looking to include in this policy do not have land as collateral, will not have it. And banks keep rejecting these people and giving loans to those who already have the money, who have the. And most times, that issue the banks fall under because they couldn't return the money. What are you doing to address this issue? It's a big one. If we need to go to the bank, if we can't get loans from the bank, who else do we turn to? And banks too will tell you that, look, Nigerians don't pay back. So I've had bankers say, they say Nigerians don't have the habit of paying back. So for you as the CBN, you're the parent body. You have to, make both sides happy. The banks have the challenges, people have the challenges. How are you addressing these challenges as it concerns borrowing from the bank?
Yeah, that is well. I'd like to go back to the earlier issue we spoke about.
Yeah.
There are two parties in any discussion.
Yeah.
There's a client who is requesting for the service, and there's a provider who is providing that service.
Okay.
Now, the starting point is the client has to be financially literate, because oftentimes people enter into contracts without fully understanding what is required of them.
Okay.
And then along the line, you find that, oh, I didn't notice this, I didn't know that. Now, on the side of the service provider as well, he has a duty to educate the client to say, you're taking the service from me. It is under these conditions.
Okay.
And then all that is available. I think for one, that's the starting point.
Okay, openness.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's the starting point.
Okay.
Openness as you go into contract.
Okay.
Okay.
The other thing as well, which is not clearly credit, but is related, is credit could be a need.
Okay.
But we believe that at the individual level, there's also a strong case to build savings.
Okay. Okay.
You should have savings for starting point.
Okay.
And then when you need to get into your project or your issues, and you have a need for a bridge finance to take you up to where you need to be, then you can take credit.
Okay.
But credit, again, we need to be fair to both sides. It is not a grant. It is not what is given and then that's it.
Yeah.
When it is given, the fund is coming out of some resources that needs to go back.
Okay.
So when you're taking a credit as well, there has to be consciousness of the fact that this money has to be paid back, given whatever conditions we agreed that we're given. So there's an element for prudency as well when you get into a credit agreement.
Yeah.
You need to consider your circumstances. If I know that my cash flow can only take X amount, I shouldn't go asking for Y.
For more, yeah.
And my service provider as well should be fair to tell me that, oh, we have asked for this, but we've reviewed and this is what we think. Can we look at this and then go into this agreement?
Okay.
Now, specifically in terms of collateral, it is not all type of loans that require collateral.
Okay.
Okay.
And that goes back to the initial thing about understanding the need and understanding the capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
So you play an advisory role also, even in the
Yes.
process of, okay.
The service providers need to play a very strong advisory, not just to also sell products. And the person taking the loan as well shouldn't just say, oh, I need this money, I need to just get it. You need to, understand first what you're getting into and assess your own situation first.
Okay.
Because when you get into that contract, then there are things expected of you.
Okay. Are there penalties for errant banks? Okay, I'm going to ask you this. Are there penalties for errant banks? Banks who don't keep their own side of the bargain? Issues with customers putting monies into banks, and after a while, they tell you, sorry, but something's wrong with your money. You see deductions in your account. It happens. I don't know why it happens, but it happens. You see certain charges. You don't know where the charges are coming from. But all of a sudden, you get SMSs saying that 35 naira has been taken off your account, this and that. Are there penalties? Did you flog the errant institutions?
I don't know about flooding, but there is something called the Guide to Bank Charge.
Okay.
The CBN has issued those guidelines to banks.
Okay.
And so there are certain charges that the banks are allowed to charge.
Yeah.
And I do not believe that any bank is going outside of those charges. In the interest of diplomacy, we do sanction banks.
Okay.
So to solve issues within a certain period of time. I would have to clarify that when I check our website later.
Okay.
But so if those issues are not solved within a certain period of time, that issue is supposed to be escalated to the CBN.
Okay.
At which point the CBN then investigates and then sanctions where necessary.
How accessible is the CBN? If a woman, again, in the rural area, because part of your drive today, or even yesterday, going to the market women and traders, if I go to my institution, my service provider, and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I have to report to the CBN, how accessible? I know there's a CBN office here in Port Harcourt. I know that for sure. As if you wrote that. How accessible is the CBN? Who do I report to? Who do I read? Very open.
Very open. And another thing I would like to actually really stress in this session is we have consumer protection to say when something goes wrong as recourse.
Okay.
But we also believe that a very strong component is financial literacy.
Okay.
The clients also need to be aware.
Yeah.
From do's and don'ts.
Because the average Nigerian, I mean, the question would be, does the average Nigerian know what the contents of the consumer rights department of the CBN has, or the information it contains? How many people know? I mean, seriously, because for me to be able to prosecute or take my bank to the CBN or complain about a certain issue, I should know my rights. But if I don't, then I might not be able to take it beyond the banking institution.
And that's why, let me just take that, okay. And that is why we are on this type of sensitization campaign.
Okay.
Because we can have some level, some engagement outside high level and all that. But we also believe that at the end of the day, the people themselves that are impacted by this need to know. And we do this as we go along. The different areas, the different stakeholders. But more importantly, we believe there's a strong component for the media as well. Because beyond the face-to-face interaction, the media has a wider reach. And part of that is also why we're here, the radio station. I mean, you have listeners, you have followers who then, we believe people are going to start calling you. So as we continue with this engagement through different media, not just at one channel, the message will be spread. And it should be an ongoing discussion.
All right.
Now, I asked you this question earlier, and so I'm going to ask Harry. She's got. But the shocking thing is that she keeps her money at home. Now, she's learned enough to know that she should save her money in the banks, but because she had a nasty experience with her relationship, how do you call it?
Account manager?
Account manager. Allegedly was taking monies from her account unknowing to this old lady. Now, there are certain people who do not, share their money, secret members of their family. They'd rather have that relationship with the banker. But because that trust was, broken, she can never, she has said it, she will never take her money to any bank now. Now that you're going out on this sensitization campaign, how can you successfully bring this person, draw this person back in? Because keeping money at home is not safe. How do you intend to, for instance,
convince her to go back to the bank?
I think that's actually an unfortunate incident, and the central bank in any way does not encourage that, and neither do we support it. And even the organization we oversee as well, we do not expect that they will sanction something like that. Now, be that as it may, organizations also have responsibility and oversight over the employees. Because within the institution, there should be clear guidelines as to how you should handle client engagement. And if that has been breached, I mean, our recommendation to that person is to lay a formal complaint to that organization. If it was actually found that that staff did that, I mean, that's criminal.
Of course.
And by all means, that should go all the way.
Okay.
And our own recommendation to people as well is don't shy back when you have incidences. Because when we do that, we shield these people and then they continue. And somebody else and somebody else and somebody else will have that same experience. So please, I mean, our kind request to her, if she's listening now, is to please go back to that organization and let her go through the process and let that, whoever that person is, if so rightly investigated is found.
Oh yes, she was found, but then again, it's difficult for her to go back. Yes.
No, it's a trust issue which we quite understand. But again, relationships can be amended.
That's right.
And now that we are going around on this initiative to talk to the public and talk to our stakeholders, we really want people to come forward. And I should also mention, as we're on this drive, it's not just the CBN. We're in Port Harcourt this week with about 6 other regulators. We have the National Insurance Commission, who oversees insurance. They're here with us. We have the NIMC, the Nigerian Identity Management Commission. We have NDIC, which is a very strong
Deposit Insurance Corporation.
Deposit protection is also very key. People say, oh, what happens if the organization goes down? Like for instance, we shared before. And a couple of other regulators as well. We are all in this together. They have oversight over this organization. So if indeed any of the service provider is found to have done what is not expected, I mean, they should by all means go through the game. But the overriding commitment is to the people of the state. So we are calling on them to join us.
All right. Well, I'm sure that there are a lot of people who would have questions to ask this morning, so we're going to give them an opportunity before we wrap up this segment of the program. So join the conversation 084461923. You could also call 08099914826, or you can call our smart number 0700P Nigeria Info. Let's hear your thoughts this morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, Daniel, good
morning.
Yes, I want to say something before I ask my question.
Go ahead.
I want to tell you, man, your CBN not open to everybody.
Your line is breaking. Your line is breaking.
I said I want to tell her that CBN is not open to everybody the way she said it.
Okay.
If you go to the CBN, you will keep moving the no loitering, no moving, no.
Okay.
We still have because that alone has scared you from that place, so it is not open.
Okay.
I want to ask, why is it that in the commercial firm, somebody wants to do construction or something business, they ask you what if it's about business guarantee?
That's you for what, JJ?
APG.
Okay.
They take your money, they use it to do business, you still pay interest on the same APG at the end of the day. Second question, why is it that the banks, they like to give somebody loan through the back door? Instead, that is people that want to do a short-term business, instead of giving a genuine loan at the end of the day.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, just keep the question. We'll answer them together. Backdoor loans, he says. Hello, good morning.
Hello, Dan. Good morning.
Good morning, please.
Yeah,
good morning.
Yeah, I'm calling from my name is Stanley.
Go ahead, Stanley.
Yeah, I want to let you know. I had an experience some time ago in Africa, Global St. John.
Okay.
I deposited my money over ₦1 million. So one day I got a text that there's 500,000 naira of
debited from your account. Right.
Yeah, so when I came back from work, I went to the branch. My account manager is a lady. So when I went there, they said they weren't giving me a very good answer.
Okay.
So I went to the branch manager. When she came out, I asked, where is the lady? Where is my account officer?
Yes.
She was shielding the lady from me.
Okay.
Telling me, don't worry, I will take care of everything. Don't worry. Let me see the baby. What they did was they went inside, brought out the baby, tall, shining, looking at me to come and calm me down.
Okay.
So after all this, I got the money back. But I can't go to report.
The CBN.
Central Bank.
Okay.
Yeah. When I got there, the government prevented me from entering. I was very thorough. So she's saying that she's not she's saying, you know.
Okay. All right, Stanley. Let's take one more call. Hello, good morning. Hello, you're live on there. Good morning. Okay, nobody home there. Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, please, my name is Samuel. I'm calling from
Samuel, go ahead.
Yeah, please, I want to ask guests about if someone needs a loan and
Yeah.
is a businessman
Okay.
and have a capital and run his business with savings, let me say for instance, like let me say a week, like 200,000 naira a week, every week.
Okay.
Now you want to ask for a loan, like 500,000 to pay month or maybe to pay back in 3 months' time.
Okay.
How is possible that this person can go ahead to obtain this loan for the bank? It does not have to know, maybe say a land document or maybe a vehicle document. So I just want to throw a light on that.
More light on that.
Apply to it.
Okay, I hope you can throw more light on that because I believe banks have their different policies and how they operate. But Sophia, you want to tackle the questions?
I'll just start with the last one, perhaps. Okay. He spoke about collateral, which is I guess the something you had mentioned earlier. Mm. What the CBN is doing in this regard, and it's something that's still a work in progress, is we're working on a movable collateral registry. Now, what that means is, for instance, you don't have your land papers, you don't have any of that to use as collateral. You can have a car, for instance, okay. You know, you take it to a registry, register it as collateral, and you can use that as collateral to access loans. It's still in like I said, a work in progress, but it's in advanced stages. And at some point, we will see that happen, whereby people who don't have land or, you know, landed property or whatever else is being requested now can actually access loans. So that's something that's a work in progress.
So I think 2 callers talked about access to CBN when we have issues to complain about.
Not accessible. It's not accessible. Yeah. Okay, I think that's going to be a take back for us, because again, which is why we've come here. Yeah. Yeah. We have a local branch here, and we have across the country. Yeah. And when we get feedback like this, it's something for us to look at. So I think for that, it's going to be a take back for us. Okay. All right. All right.
Okay, let's take just one last call so you can answer the question and wrap up because time is fast spent. Hello, good morning. Yes, you're the last call on this second. Go ahead, please.
CBN, there are so many impediments for someone to access the loan at the bank. Now, CBN is very aware of all these impediments, like asking for collateral, asking for a surety or whatever. Yeah. And nothing has been done in that effect. And so they kept on telling people to come and access a loan without actually doing anything concerning all these impediments. Okay. And if you see the newly formed microfinance bank, celebrities, if you go there, you see so many activities happening there. People give this loan to their friends. And it's very obvious. I think they don't do anything. Okay. They keep on coming out telling us to come and collect loans, and they know that we cannot access all the other places. Why?
Okay, so again, you're saying it's not as easy as it sounds. So finally, this is Fadeyi, you have to just address this issue and wrap up because the complaints just keep coming, keep pouring in, lots of complaints out there.
And we are glad they're coming, okay, because we want this to be a discussion.
Okay.
And then, because when we have this interaction, then we know exactly maybe the areas we need to go look at, yes, and where we need to review. Okay. And in terms of access to loan, I think we started by saying we want this to be easy, yes, for the consumers who need the services. Okay. So to do this as well, it's not something, we're not going to just sit and take a unilateral decision, yeah, which is why we're having this engagement with other stakeholders. But the point that is given is, at a starting point, whoever is going to that contract needs to be mindful of these personal circumstances. Yeah? Yeah. And again, each organization has clear policies and procedures and guidelines. Yeah. The products are not the same, the services are not the same. But we also know that the capacity of individuals are also not the same. Mm. So the general principle that applies to everyone is, when you go into that relationship, spend a few minutes, read the fine print. Yeah. And in the areas you're clearly not comfortable with, ask questions.
You can with somebody who knows, yes, more about this.
In fact, we even advise that seek get a financial advisor to match.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to be sure that your interest at the end of the day is protected. All right. And should that happen and then something goes wrong, we've talked about the recourse that is available. But some of the callers this morning also said, in terms of location-wise, we are not as accessible.
Yeah.
And that is a strong take back from us.
Okay.
We need to look at that.
All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Temitope, Fadeyi, Head Financial Inclusion Secretariat CBN, and Sophia Abu as well, a part of the Financial Inclusion Secretariat of the CBN. There's still very much important until Friday, right? Still going around traders.
Markets,
okay.
3 markets,
okay.
and brokerage markets.
Fantastic. So you can go there and meet them and even ask them questions if you couldn't reach them on air. And looking forward to